Seeing is believing. Do you remember what you were doing during September 11th, 2001? I do. When September 11th of any year comes up, 5th anniversary, 10th anniversary, everyone knows what they were doing during that day and they talk about it. The generation before us didn't talk about those type of things. The generation before us witnessed other 9/11s. The generation before us was alive when Malcolm X died, was alive when Martin Luther King died, was alive when John F. Kennedy died, was alive when Medgar Evers died, was alive when Robert Kennedy died. And that brings us to the reason why we are here. The generation before us doesn't seem to talk about their 9/11s very much. They've had their reasons. Maybe the pain was too great to bear to have that conversation with the children. Maybe they were brought up in a school where you didn't show weakness. Maybe they were brought up at a time where it was so painful, you simply just did not discuss pain. But does that mean we do not discuss history? Does that mean that we let media tell our story, where history truly becomes his story? We're going to be talking to Jacquelyn Smithson Howard, That Kid Roger, Sean King, and myself. We discuss the history of poetry in respect to the city of Sacramento. We document our own history before somebody else documents it for us. What needs to happen?
A lot of cats ask me if this story is true. It is.
Once upon a time in the days of low fades, I was on the block with Claude and my man Hayes, 199th Street between Jamaica Ave and the Hill. And I'm asking my brothers to chill, but they won't chill. They like money and hood fame. My man Hayes has on a big ass gold chain. Only problem is it isn't his. The chain belongs to his cousin, who is deep in the drug biz. Hayes wants to take a ride, but for nothing more to take the chain on the ride like it's on tour. Now we're riding dirty in Claude's car, stunting and fronting like wannabe rock stars, with the windows down and the system turned up, bringing attention to ourselves, not giving a fuck, walking in spots, giving props and giving dap to grimy ass cats who sell crack where they rest at. Unwise.
Being a follower will get you killed. Following against your will, going against your gut, following these nuts will get your ass stuck up. Yeah, being a follower will get you killed. Following against your will, listen to the voice inside, take it in stride, and you just might stay alive.
I'm on the block paying attention to facial expressions, and each one says that they're gonna get them. The gold chain is looking like shark's bait. The shark's on the corner and man, they can't wait to catch your brother, slip him and trip him so they can flip him and dip him.
I had
Put him on
rhythm
the
and
ground
poetry.
and have that ass stripping.
It started in Atlanta, Georgia, at Cat's Cafe, and I would talk to the OGs of Atlanta, and they always talk about the glory days of Atlanta, when poetry was better, poetry was more real, poetry was more sincere, hip hop was more real, hip hop was sincere. Oh man, remember back in whatever year that may have been, 92, 95, whatever, and I'm just like, damn, am I late to the party? Same thing happened when I got to Sacramento in 2013. You know what I mean? When I talk to guys like yourself and guys like Acronyms, and they tell me about this kind of golden era of poetry. You know what I mean? Could you talk about that a little bit?
Specifically in Sacramento?
Specifically as it pertains to Sacramento.
Well, I think what it is there was a time, and for us, I would suppose it started. So we go before we did the Blue Room. We were linked up with Conscious Vibes. So
what year?
Well, yeah, paint a year for me.
I would say like 2006-ish.
2006.
2006.
Okay. Before the economy crashed.
2006? No.
No, the economy was already crashing at 2006.
2006. It was 96.
96.
96.
Okay, that sounds better.
See what happened? You start getting old.
Okay. So before the towers came down.
So before spoken word really started to take off in Sacramento, you had a lot of places to go read poetry.
Okay.
You know, you had a lot of academic poetry. As far as the places for us, it really was poetry on a Saturday afternoon, straight out scribes, you know, V.S. Chechezi, you know, and Stajabu. And so they were holding it down. And so I remember, you know, that was the first place I ever went and read a poem at.
Okay.
You know, and I thought, you know, back then,
Your first poem?
first poem that I ever shared, right? So I was like, I thought I was the shit.
Young Sean.
Young Sean, I thought I was the shit. I had, you know, by then I had done a couple little chapbooks and stuff like that, and I found a place I could do it. I'm like, hey, you know, what do I need to do to get a feature here? They're like, our wait list is about a year out, so we can sign you up for a feature.
A year for
next year.
Well, okay.
You know, so you felt some kind of way about it.
Yeah.
You know, it's like you already feel like you're the shit. I'm on my way to here. But you know, they had, you know, they were doing their thing, and I respected them because they were activists and poets and about the community and everything. So if they said it was a year before I can be on that list, that's what we're gonna do.
Okay.
So, but you know, so over time we start gradually doing little bits and pieces. So you had poets out at Davis, which was Angelo Williams. You had Mario Ellis Hill, Vincent Cobelt. That was like the whole Davis contingency. Guy Allison.
Okay.
You know, so you had that group, and then you had me and some people from Sacramento, and then you had a couple of younger poets like Mariana. She was, at that time, she was the younger poet.
Wow.
You know, Mariana Sousa.
Okay.
Oh,
You know, so,
wow.
and so what happened was, there was two things that happened. One, Ebro, Hot 97, Ebro's Hot 97?
Yeah, Ebro's Hot 97.
So he was
old man Ebro.
Yeah, Ebro. So he was,
102?
yeah. So
He
Ebro
drove
was
with him.
Yeah.
Okay.
So Ebro was here. They had a group called Conscious Vibes, which was Andre, Ebro, and Doug. And so Doug,
your history. I never knew that.
so Doug and Andre are still out here doing Conscious Vibes. They do shows. So when Talib comes out, a lot of time that's a Conscious Vibe production.
Okay.
So Doug was real close friends. You know, with me, we all went to school together, so we were all close. So one day we're sitting, and Doug is like, "Hey, we're doing this this thing. We want to do some acid jazz, you know, mixed in with some poetry and spoken word."
Nice.
And this was he wanted to do that. It was on a place called On Broadway.
Okay.
You know, and so by that time I'd also started interacting with some of the Davis crew. So we got the places opening up, you know, so we're piggybacking really off the back of hip hop at this point.
Right, that's
You know,
right.
so piggybacking off the back of hip hop.
Okay.
You know, Conscious Vibes, and they're kind of laying the foundation. You know, there was already poetry happening, but it wasn't really spoken word per se.
Okay.
Then we started hooking up with the Davis crew, so I opened up for Naeem Akbar at Davis, ended up connecting with Angelo there. So me and Angelo, we start going out and hitting some of the open mics,
Okay.
you know, periodically or whatever. And so me and Angelo would go do our thing. Fast forward a little bit, African Liberation Day happens. Me and
Okay.
Angelo were scheduled to do African Liberation Day. Sanaa, you know, V.S. Chechezi, she was like, "Hey, we're a little short on time, so I'm gonna need you and Angelo to combine your set with Mariana." You know,
Wow.
back then we didn't have egos like
Right.
we do today.
Right.
So we're like,
Okay. It was all love
It's
back
all
then.
fun.
It
So-
was all love back then.
so you know, so we go off to the side and we're like, all right, so this is the piece that I'm gonna do. You know, what are you in with? Are you in with that word? Okay, I'm gonna pick up on that word and I'm gonna just roll right into my piece. And we was like, we like this.
Okay.
And so, you know, when we first, before the Blue Room, you know, we were calling ourselves 360, 365.
Okay.
You know, 360 degrees, 365 days a year. And it was,
That's
Angela
dope.
was the angel.
Okay.
I was the king, and then Mariana was the sister because she was still 16 at the time.
Okay.
You know, so she was still a baby. So, you know, we're doing it on Broadway. That gets shut down. But by then, we had kind of whet the appetite for the city. So people were coming out there on Broadway because Conscious Vibes had the name. They introduced the spoken word as far as the night scene.
Right.
So we had that on Broadway, ended up closing down, but people were still clamoring for the art. We ended up hooking up with Jasmine's Art of Pasta. Right.
This is crazy information.
Yeah, the owner's son, you know, he wrote poetry.
Okay.
You know? So he wanted to do something there. So we partnered with them. We brought in some other people, Ifa Madupwe. We had a sister named September. Mariana was part of the group. We had a bass player. We had a DJ.
Nice.
You know.
Nice.
And so we started doing this thing called the Blue Room. And that started, you know, around 98.
And that started bubbling. How successful was the Blue Room?
Oh, the Blue Room was, it was crazy.
Oh wow.
Was it
Because-
every week, every night?
It was every Thursday.
And-
Okay.
Oh,
Okay.
And the blue room was crazy because it was, we were getting probably, between 100 and 150 people or whatever every time we did the thing.
So y'all had a poppers.
We had it popping.
Okay.
And so, but that was the thing. It's crazy like how we talk about that golden era because acronyms and beneficial, they came in the next.
Okay, they was the second wave.
It was the second wave. Because what we
Okay.
did was we really started that first nighttime wave. And we were being, the SAC News and Review was covering us. The
Okay.
Observer was there on a weekly basis. We made, the B start covering some of the stuff we were doing
wow.
because we were creating this phenom. Love Jones was, had also stoked that.
Loved
fire.
it, okay.
Yeah, Love Jones also stoked that fire.
Okay.
But one of the things we did with the Blue Room that was unique is because we had, really we had 7 poets and some other performers or whatever. And so we didn't really do features with the poets that were part of the crew. What we did is we used those poets to set and reset the mood. So if
Nice.
a poet came up and they were bringing a vibe that we didn't really want in the space,
Right.
Angelo, you got next.
Right. Gotcha.
And so go reset it, right? Go get them back on track. And so we did that. But then we started, and the Blue Room only lasted less than a year, which
Okay.
is
So let me put this in context because I don't want our viewers to miss this. Do you understand what he's saying, ladies and gentlemen who are watching? Crowd control it started in the golden era.
but yeah.
You guys were conscious about energy and vibe. So if so and so came from out of town and did a very depressing poem about death, and that's not where y'all wanted to go.
Right.
You had soldiers to
Right.
be just like, okay, reset that.
Right.
Absolutely. Okay, good. I'm sorry to cut you off. I just want to make sure our viewers understand what's going on because that's not new.
And so the other thing we did, so Mahogany, because Kyrie was part of the original Blue Room.
Okay. Oh,
Yeah,
I didn't know that. Okay.
So because Kyrie came after
Okay.
363, 65, he came with that Blue Room.
Is he more second wave or he's original?
He was
golden
original.
era?
When me and
Okay.
Angelo, the funny thing is when me and Angelo first started doing the poetry, we were hitting the spots, and then Mariana got added on. Kyrie would, he would be at all the poetry venues with us, and he would be showing us his photos because he was a photographer back then.
Right.
But it was
right,
Polaroids, right?
Okay.
Look at the book, but he was also,
He had the Polaroids.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
but he was also sharing his poetry.
Okay.
It's like, hey, what you think about this? And so when we got to the Blue Room, that's when we started putting together our super team, and we were like, okay, we're gonna rock with this. The other thing with the Blue Room that was unique, there was a couple of things. One, that's where the 5-minute, 1 poem or 2 poems.
That's fine. Okay. Know your history. That's
where that came in
from.
Sacramento.
Okay. In
What is
Sacramento.
it?
It's you're the guy.
So
5 minutes
fine.
or 2 poems, whichever.
Whichever
Do your
comes
do your 2 poems in 5 minutes though,
Whichever's less.
whichever's
Right.
less.
Okay.
Right.
And then the other thing we did was our open mic was only 7 poets, no matter the night.
No matter the night, you was only having 7 poets on.
And it ended up, I don't know that we knew the impact it would have,
Okay.
but what it did was, if you really wanted to get on the open mic, you got to get there early. Sign up.
The psychology. Okay.
And you can-
Right. The business.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And if you weren't there, and you was like, man, I really want to get on the open mic, man, we got you next week.
Right. Okay.
So we started
Right,
open
right.
mic list for the next week.
Exactly.
That same
okay.
night.
The week before.
The
Yeah,
wait-
that's
yeah,
awesome.
If
the
we
wait
had
list.
overflow, no matter what, we're not gonna go past our 7.
And it's great. Well, let me tell you guys like this. So we're about 3 or 4 months into Rhythm and Poetry at Stella Studios. Sean King comes in, and me and you had the greatest conversation backstage-ish, right? And one of the things you said to me that really struck me was, "Keep going." That's all you said. You were just like, "Keep it going." You know what I mean? And you kept saying that, like. Every time I saw you come through the doors, except for maybe once or twice, your message was always keep going. So I got 2 questions for you. Number 1, my era of coming out of town, What wave do you consider that? Is that third wave? Is that fourth wave? Was there another wave after the golden era and the first wave that I don't know about?
So I think the foundation was Straight Out Scribes.
Okay.
The
What is
first, the Straight Out Scribes, the mother-daughter poetry team.
That's what I tried to introduce you to.
Yes.
That's the foundation.
Okay.
You
And
know,
they're called the straight.
Straight Out Scribes.
SOS.
Straight Out Scribes. Okay.
And them, you know, the thing with them is they came from that era before any poetry beef, before any of that. They were activists first, poets second.
Okay.
They were respected in the community. Nobody had anything negative to say about them.
Wow. Okay.
Right? No matter who you were, no matter who you thought you were, they were.
That's
You
what's
know,
up. Okay. that's
Nobody, you
what's
know, even today.
up. Okay.
Even today.
Wow.
Young or old,
Years
young poets, middle-aged poets, older poets, scribes is respected. Don't matter.
Wow.
No matter what you've done or what you think you've done, they have earned it.
Yeah.
Right. So the next wave was the Blue Room. Now, when we came in, we were young.
Okay.
You know, we were still early 20s, things like that. So we were hip hop generation.
Yeah, I'm doing the math,
Yeah.
so I'm like, okay, if this is mid '90s, yeah, you guys
Yeah.
are 20 somethings for real.
And so, you know, so we didn't have no problems with beef. We
right.
didn't have no problems with none of that stuff. And there were other older poets who were trying to tell us how we should, you know, move. And like all young people do, which is why I respect the young people today.
Right.
We rejected any of that shit.
Right.
You know, and so it was really interesting because, you know, we were also coming from that activist realm because we were still all in the community doing something. I think creatively, I think what made the Blue Room kind of stand apart was, one, we started doing plays. We did that play.
Okay.
We did a play where it was kind of like a man and woman thing, dual conscious kind of thing. So we did a play where, you know, me and a girl are talking. I got a person behind me as my conscious, poetically saying what I'm thinking.
Oh, that's really dope.
She got somebody behind her poetically saying what she's thinking. And then, but we're also doing our own poems.
So you guys brought some serious theater to the Blue Room?
Yeah.
And that's really dope.
But we were also crossing over with the Bay. So we had the Bay Area was traveling to Sacramento to come to the Blue Room.
Once upon a time, the Bay was coming out here.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
So
dope.
so the poets from out there, they were coming here to rock.
Okay.
You know, so you had the hottest Bay Area poets. We was all kind of family and all of that stuff. And so, but it was, you know, so I think that was what was unique. We had Eugene Redmond came in and rocked one night.
Nice.
And he was sharing his photo albums from Maya Angelou and Oprah Winfrey's boat cruise. And because that was the crew, right?
Right.
Marvin X came out and did a one-man play,
Wow.
you know, as part of the thing.
Wow.
But we were also open. You know, you would have, you know, brothers from the Nation of Islam would come in and read scripture. People from, you know, the Christian side would come in and read scripture, but it was all love. Like no beef, no issue.
That's crazy.
And so that was what was unique. We brought dance in. And, you know, we had that and we had integrated with all of that stuff. So when you get to the second wave, then, you know, because it was led more by a promoter, now you have more just kind of more towards a pure entertainment.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
You know, that's when, you know, you start seeing more stage names, you know, because we were all going off.
Because I noticed you don't have a stage name. Your
Right.
name is your name. Okay.
Right. But, you know, so you start seeing Rodzilla, you start seeing, you know, more beneficial to great, you start seeing acronyms.
Okay.
So you start seeing more stage names in that next wave. You know, that right after that, you start seeing more people. Sacramento had a slam team,
Okay.
you know, poetry slam team, so you start seeing more of that.
Oh, I come from that because I have promoter background.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? I promoted nightclubs and stuff at a very young age, 18. You know what I mean? And my name Graffiti Bleu is from that theatrical.
Oh yeah,
You know what I mean? All that stuff. So wow, that's freaking crazy. Okay, we're gonna wrap this up, but I want to ask you this last question, because you were essentially a pioneer. You know what I mean? Of what was going on in this particular city, and you've seen it in many different forms. I know you see everything. You know what I mean? Well, you try. You follow what I'm saying? Is this wave in good hands?
I think there's a little work to do.
Okay.
Being honest in terms of,
Okay.
you know, and not your way, but I think There's a few that have been out there that have been, solid.
Okay.
And when I say there's still work to do, I see a younger group,
Right.
of crazy talented poets.
Yeah, there's some guys.
super
I'm
talented.
just like, man, how'd you come up with that? Exactly.
But one of the things that I noticed is happening, and kind of getting back to the writing, is the slam has kind of become so popular, in the Sacramento area. Some of it is, they're going into the schools and they're teaching slam. So the format of slam is going to be 3 minutes, on a poem. It's for scores. It's competitive in nature, and so you see a lot of the same cadence, you see a lot of the same delivery when you get into slam poetry. You see a lot of the same focus. The problem is, as poets who start doing slam when they're young, high school, even middle school, when they go into the poetry community, where it's more about the mic and the sharing, they haven't really learned a lot of times how to transition from being a slam poet, because when you actually are on stage doing your poetry, now you have to interact. You can't just get up and just be like, I'm gonna do this 3-minute piece. So they haven't figured out the feature part.
Right.
In a lot of instances.
Right.
And one of the things I always really wanted to do, like my favorite poet from a reading standpoint was Khalil Gibran.
Oh shit.
Yeah.
Okay.
And the reason being is because I read his stuff and I was like, that shit, because I wasn't,
Okay.
a lot of academic poetry didn't really pop for me.
Right.
But I read his stuff, I was like, it says something, and the language is beautiful.
Right.
And I say, a lot of times you see poetry that focuses on the beauty of the language, and I'm like, if it don't speak to me, no matter what the art form is,
I'm the same way.
It's like if I don't believe you.
Yeah, I'm the same. You please convince me. Yeah, absolutely.
And so, so what I tried to do is I tried to write in a way where if you just came across it on paper, it still would hit you.
Right.
If I did it on stage, it still is going to hit you.
Yeah.
Because you don't know how your poetry is going to get out there. If you write it and you put it in a book, you want that book to hit.
I'm the same way.
If you're on stage, and so part of that is a business aspect, right? Because you don't, from a marketing and promotion standpoint, you don't know how somebody's going to get it. If I'm doing a flyer, my flyer is two-sided because I know a lot of flyers are going to be on the ground. So no matter if you're walking and you look down, I need you to know real quick what the hell's going on. And so with the poetry, a lot of that is you want it to pop, no matter what media it's in.
Well, I came to town with that mentality, with the writing mentality.
Yeah.
Right. And when I got to town, the slam energy was in the air.
Oh yeah.
Right? So I'm doing my literary, metaphoric, what have you, and some of the other community have the ice grill, and they had a very competitive energy. I respond. Because I'm from battle rap. I'm from New York. I'm from MC versus MC. So I quickly deduce, I'm not saying I was right, but I'm just like, oh, we going ball for ball. Let's go. You know what I mean? And then that gets misinterpreted. Exactly. He's egotistical, he's this, Graffiti thinks he's all that, blah, blah, blah. I'm just like, you guys drew first blood. You know what I mean? You guys wanted to compete with me. I accept the challenge. And now I'm a bad guy because I accept. How has that happened? But I'm so glad you filled in the gaps of what it was, because I so understand.
Well, and I think
the climate of
Like
the
the
culture.
trajectory.
Absolutely, like where it came from.
Right.
What it went through and all of that stuff. So there's nothing new under the sun. The dance and all that stuff. All of these elements that I wanted to incorporate and have done that.
And one of the things I think that was different when you got here is, you have a lot of people that were doing venues or wanted to do venues.
Right.
And mathematically, I think, people in Sacramento don't understand math in a lot of ways. Right. And I say that to say, you got a population in the Sacramento area of 1 million people.
Right.
Right. We see certain people at the poetry venues, so we're all fighting over that handful of people that go to the poetry venues.
Right.
The poets, there is money in poetry.
Right, okay.
There's money in poetry.
Right.
But the people that are getting paid doing poetry are selling it to people who don't have access to poetry because it doesn't have to be great.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? So if one of the things is like if you go and you do poetry for people that have never heard it and you move them,
Right.
they become fans.
Mm-hmm.
If you go to a poetry venue where everybody's a poet and you do dope ass poetry, you become competition.
You are the competition now.
Right. And
As I slammed Maya Angelou's book, I'm sorry.
Because you see things. Like you see things. You see poets, and you be like, how is that person getting all that love?
Right.
And you realize they're not writing for poets.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to a poetry venue trying to sell poets who are trying to sell me a book, trying to sell you a book. You know.
Man, I'm learning so much
So-
here today.
When you saw his venture, Rhythm and Poetry, what was different about what he was doing?
It was more inviting. I like
It was more what?
more inviting. I like what he was doing. It was a different, energy. The
Okay.
food was a nice touch, you know what I mean?
Okay.
The food was
No,
a nice touch.
no. Shout out to Tina Cates
Yeah.
and all she did in the early days with the food. I will say that was definitely, I cannot even front and not give her just due. She had some really good vendors come through.
But but I think the thing though is a lot of times as poets we didn't see, the bigger picture. We didn't see that, we're fighting over, a few hundred people that, do the whole Chitlin circuit of poetry.
Indeed,
Right?
indeed.
When you have a whole group of people out there that don't even know that poetry exists. Now Terry has kind of carved up a subsegment or whatever, because his group is not people that typically.
Right now,
go to
okay,
poetry
what
events.
wave would you consider Terry Moore?
Terry was actually interesting because Terry came in. He was doing poetry before the spoken word scene started.
Okay.
He was out at Culture Collection in Foreign Road.
Wow.
He
A
had
lot of history on this conversation.
he had been he was writing poetry and he was selling poetry in the bookstore over at Culture Collection.
Okay.
Had the relationship with Betty.
So he came in the game with this promoter mentality.
He came to the game with
Okay.
mentality,
Okay.
so he was already out there. That was his business.
Okay.
When we started doing the Blue Room, it was Terry was always telling Kyrie, "Oh, that shit would never work," because that.
Right.
So he's
Okay.
always telling him, "Oh, that spoken word would never work." And so
Right.
one of the things we did was we did a Kyrie Terry feature.
At the Blue Room.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Damn,
and
this
that
is
was-
good talk, man.
And I think that was Terry's first feature,
Okay.
like first time that he really did anything like that.
Okay.
And so then he started to, promoter-wise, he started to understand the value,
Okay.
in doing that.
Okay.
And so Terry's kind of in a way all on his own in some way
Okay.
because he was doing it. We brought him in, he did his feature. He also did the slam team.
Right.
So he's did that, and then he finally kind of settled into his own. He had his group.
No, I shout out to Terry Moore, man. He
Yeah.
does. He has his own lane, and I will never deny his proper due on that aspect. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Okay.
But it's but yeah, that's the thing. Though. I think mathematically we just
We are fighting, or we think we are at least, for the same group. And right before, and I'm sorry, I cut you off. And right before, or whenever I come back, and I'm brainstorming on what the rebirth is going to be. I actually know what the rebirth is going to be. I just don't want to say it on camera.
right.
At the end of the day, how do we how do we attract the people outside of the poets? We know there's about 100 or 200 artists, promoters, poets, and all of that stuff. We all know each other.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Or at least we know of each other. You know what I'm saying? So that's fine. How do we reach the other million and change, in the city and bring them in? And that's where I'm trying to go.
So, go ahead.
She was just
I wanted to ask the question about just the term slam, because from my era of writing, when you said earlier about write first, it was the quality of the writing and the impact that you wanted the reader or the listener to have on your message. When it transitions to slam, it's no longer about the quality of writing more than it is about the competition
The performance.
of me being able to slam you.
Well,
And for me, the term slam was a negative thing, meaning I gotta put you down to make me look bigger.
Right. So I
And
think,
so that's my question is, how do you transition then out of the slam mentality of the attitude of it, the power struck battle?
when I think the one thing I would say on that is, slam was different than battle rapping and hip hop in terms of
Okay.
battle rapping and hip hop was more direct.
Yeah, battle rap,
you diss me, I got something
You
coming
play
back
it
at
back.
you.
Absolutely.
You know, and slam is more, all right, I need to get this score. We're competing, you know, for the judges' attention, not necessarily with each other.
Right.
And so you're doing
Okay.
things or whatever. I'm going to do something that's heart-wrenching, something that's captivating. I'm going to perform in a way to where I'm going to get a higher score than everybody else that's competing.
So it is about content.
Good.
To a degree, it's about.
Okay.
So the interesting thing with slam is a lot of times when you go to slam competitions, the judges are randomly picked. Sometimes those judges have no background in poetry or spoken word whatsoever.
Indeed. Yeah.
You know, and
I've seen that.
so it really comes down to, you know, how does this judge feel about what you just did? And that's why you see the scores are kind of all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
There's not a consistent. It's consistently inconsistent.
yeah, they don't give the judges in slam a criteria and say this is how we're going to judge you. Where on the other hand, say there's a poetry out loud competition, and if you're a judge for the poetry out loud competition, they give you a very specific criteria of what the judges should be looking for when they're judging you. Slam is what you feel. Any score you give is valid because that's what you wanted to give as a score. You know, and so from a writing standpoint, though, I think slam, the one thing is slam was more theatric than writing. So a lot of times you will see a piece that moves you through the stage.
Through the strength of the performance.
But if you didn't, if you looked at it on paper, it may not speak to you.
Okay.
But slam also blew up because a big part of it was, one, it was competition. There was some money associated with it. You know, you had different pots where people could win. But then you had the movie slam that came out.
Right.
And Saul Williams, you know, came out and did his thing. Now, one thing, you know, about Saul is Saul was trained in theater and acting and drama.
Right.
And
so of course he's gonna kill that lane.
He did things better than performing poets did because he was trained in performance. And so, you know, he's a dope writer, but he was able to elevate himself in some ways because he understood delivery, he understood, you know, where to stand, how to be, how to act. Because a lot of people who do poetry don't go get that training first.
A lot of people in poetry don't even know like body language.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They're doing something confident, slunched over.
Right.
Or they're doing something humble
Yeah.
with their chest out. You know what I mean? I'm just like, it's not working.
So if you take somebody who's trained in theater and in those kind of arts, if you take somebody that understands speech and debate, they have practice. You know, and a lot of people that are doing poetry, that's why you see people hit the stage for the first time and, you know, they're a clown at first. You know, you can see them, they're shaking, you know, they're all of those things. Because there's, you know, we don't, you know, going back to my dance being my favorite, there's no training program or whatever that basically prepares somebody to get on the stage and really deliver their piece the way that it should be delivered. So,
What was you gonna say?
I'm just saying, like, rhythm and poetry, like, I was that outsider, like, I was like the target market that you guys are talking about.
Absolutely.
And even like in this conversation right now, I didn't understand like really the history of the Sacramento poetry scene. So when I first went to rhythm and poetry and I saw Jackie do her thing and I saw Mash do her thing, I saw you and Tina do her thing, I was just like, this is amazing.
Wow. Okay.
You know?